It was just a love of history, and you kind of find a method to find out about history, and it's kind of, I've often liked fishing when I was younger, so it's kind of the thrill of what you can find.
My mate Ben rang me up one day and said, "Oh, do you want to go out to metal detecting?" I said, "Yeah, alright." Went out, and that was it then.
I don't know, you just get addicted to it. I've been out in absolutely freezing cold, soaking wet. If I still just plod on.
I think my friend got a metal detector and he found a few bits behind his house, and then we do a lot together, motocross and stuff like that. So when he got one, I thought, oh, I'll get one. You just get addicted to it. Once you found something good, you're just constantly looking for something else good.
Well, my brother, he had a detector in a cupboard for years, and we bumped into a farmer when we were doing some work, and we asked, and he said, yeah, come along. So that was it. That was the spark that lit the fire, and yeah, we were always like, oh, we're not going to go on one of those geeky rallies and, you know, join in with millions of people, but no, we're right into it now, so yeah.
These are the Axe Valley and East Devon Searchers, a metal detecting rallies group with over 350 members. Today, 22 of them are gathered here in Axminster. Their organiser, Owen Williams, has identified fields near a Roman fort that have not been ploughed in 60 years. The group has high hopes.
That farm there, where that hedge is there, on the historical maps there's a Roman fort there, and that was there 2,000 years ago. It's where they had a sort of a square fort with structures to protect a little Roman village in there. So once I found that on the maps, I knew that if I got a farm with fields next to it, there's a high chance you're going to find Roman stuff.
2017 saw a record number of treasure found by individual detectorists or groups, with 1,239 reported cases.
It's all about research, 90% of metal detecting. If you go onto a field and you haven't researched it, it could be dead.
When you first start, you don't know what tones to listen to, so you dig anything. You seem to find more, but then when you start getting into it and learning your machine, you only ever dig the better stuff. So it's like brass, copper, and the better tones. So you leave like iron and stuff like that in the ground.
Colouring on it. You never know if it's part of a toy car that some child's dropped. Could be a very ornate button. Yeah, let's have a look on the other side. Oh, it is exactly what it is. There's the eyelet on the back, so it totally is a button. So there's a little attachment. How old it is, that is, yeah, it's quite very detailed actually. You can see the bits of mud falling away in between the decoration there now. I need to ask the professional what he thinks it is. I'll do. Drop it, give it a little spray down, and the colours might pop out. Just watered. So there's some, again, I don't know, it could be Victorian. I've not seen anything that pattern before. It looks old, but Owen's the historian, but
If Stewart's find qualifies as possible treasure, he will have to report it within 14 days to the local coroner. That's under the Treasure Act of 1996. The coroner then decides whether the find is treasure.
Treasure is property of the Crown. For something to qualify as treasure, it needs to be more than 300 years old at the time that it's found, and at least 10% gold or silver. Any prehistoric assemblage, any hoard of 2 or more items of base metal is also considered treasure. That's since 2002 that was added in. So things like a hoard of Bronze Age axe heads, that would now be treasure. It gets slightly more complicated when you get to coins. A single gold or silver coin isn't treasure. Generally, for a coin hoard to count as treasure, it needs to have 2 or more precious metal or 10 or more base metal. Any item found with treasure is also treasure.
I've been lucky to find some nice things. I've recently found a little bit of gold bracelet, about 1 inch wide, about 10 grams, which is quite a bit of gold. Probably Welsh gold, and it's Bronze Age, so that's going through the treasure process.
Possible treasure is usually handed in to local finds liaison officers who collaborate with the British Museum and write reports to advise coroners.
If something is declared treasure and a museum does want to acquire it, the finder doesn't have a choice, nor does the landowner. It doesn't belong to them, essentially, it's not theirs. If something is not treasure, it belongs to the landowner, and it's then based on sort of prior agreement to who it will go to.
Lots of finders have really good relationships with the landowners, and sometimes they come up with their own agreements. So in some cases, they agree that the finder will keep the whole share up into a certain amount.
I've had a couple of bits go up to treasure, but I had them back, and the farmer said, "You found them, you keep them."
Treasure is obviously only a very small portion of what gets found. It's only a very small portion of our job. It's just because of the legal process, it takes up a sort of disproportionate amount of our sort of time. So the majority of what I record is in copper alloy, which doesn't fall under the Treasure Act at all.
The common misconception that you see on TV is the word treasure. Okay, we don't look for treasure because that's like, it's not. We're more into the history. A lot of these guys don't mind if they don't find anything. If they find a bit of pottery that's got 1,000 years worth of age on it, they're happy with that. The whole treasure thing's a bit. I don't like that word because it makes people think we're just digging massive holes and trying to find treasure. It's a misconception.
There's a lot of times when you go out and you do find just buttons and lead, so it's it's not all about the treasure, but when you do find something, it makes it all the more precious. So.
Once I see a silver disc, I know it's going to be something really nice. For 9 times out of 10, it's a ring pull or chewing gum paper.
It's the luck of the draw. You can go to a field and find nothing, and then the next day you'll go in the next field and there'll be, finds coming out here, there and everywhere. So that's the joy of it. And it's not just the coins, it's the artefacts and finding out the history.
I don't want to kind of be attracted just by a nice area, but a group that's just doing it for money. And then that means it just implies that a lot of the finds would just kind of go onto eBay and not onto the Portable Antiquity Scheme database, which is kind of like the best place for it.
So the Portable Antiquity Scheme is a voluntary database which records finds all over the country. It doesn't matter if they're treasure or not, everything can be recorded on the database. And actually the vast majority are non-treasure items.
The scheme isn't sort of a legal body or anything. It has no sort of statutory power. It's a scheme paid for by the British Museum and local partners to sort of hire people in sort of local museums and local historic environment record offices to record these finds. It was set up in response to things that would be missed by the Treasure Act.
Hammered coin. So it could be Henry III, something like that.
Since the Treasure Act and the national establishment of the Portable Antiquity Scheme in 1999, there's been a huge increase in reported treasure and antiquities.
It used to be sort of the advice that from start to finish the whole process would take a year. When that was written, we were looking at about 200 cases a year. Last year we had about 1,200, so that timescale has it's not realistic anymore.
The Portable Antiquity Scheme has recorded 1.3 million artefacts at this point, and pretty much none of them would have been recorded otherwise.
It's not just the framework that has led to this rise. Before today's dig, Owen and the group did their research.
You start having to use maps, history sites, you find the sites, the areas, then you've got to go through the part of asking the farmers for permission and stuff like that. Then you look at LiDAR, which is like satellites in space that show you bumps in the ground and stuff like that.
Getting permission from landowners and following the country code are also fundamental parts of detectoring.
There are scenarios where illegal activities are going on, but there are also, I think the vast majority of cases, it's all perfectly legal.
It all comes down to good communication. The worst thing is if a farmer just finds somebody turning up on the land uninvited without any conversation beforehand, and then the relationship's really sour. So often if land's very close to a road, somebody who's perhaps got a new Christmas present or something, a new metal detector, and thinks, I'll find somewhere easily accessible, just test it out, see if it's working, then that's the sort of thing we see. Or otherwise just seeing evidence that somebody's accessed the land, could be gates left open, could be little holes that have been dug somewhere in the field, that sort of thing. We're not finding lots of conflict, but I guess as more and more people take an interest in kind of local history and things going on around them, it's likely to increase.
There is some debate over whether or not detecting is beneficial to archaeology. The critics of detecting will argue that detectorists come in, they pull stuff out of the ground and they take it away again. But the other side of that argument is that if people weren't going out and finding these things, they could well get destroyed.
We're saving stuff because in another 100 years' time, all the stuff that you're seeing today gets smashed to pieces by the plough and all the rollers and stuff, and there's nothing for anyone to see. So we're basically helping out the museums pretty much, because museums don't get the opportunity to do this. They put in a trench and whatever they find with their scrapers is it. We help the farmers find stuff. They lose ploughshares that are worth 80 quid each and stuff like that, and we find them and give them back to them. If they lose tools and stuff like that, we find them. We've found farmers lost gold rings. They've asked us to, he knows he's lost a ring in a certain field, it's been his family for 80 years, and we found that for them.
Prehistoric and Roman sites are turning up in the sort of hinterland of Roman Exeter, and it's interesting that some of those sites we've asked for planning conditions so that the developers fund archaeological work, partly on the back of some have had metal detectorist finds on them already, and that's a piece in the mosaic.
From our point of view, the biggest impact is that all this material, which wouldn't be in a museum, is either going to a museum, or if it's not, it is recorded. When detectorists go out, they find these things and an archaeological record is created for that item. That information is available. Any member of the public can go online and look at the database.
I like getting home and cleaning up everything and seeing what it's actually like, sort of thing. And then if things that you don't know about, I look on the internet, revises it, and it's good to learn about the history, sort of thing.
It's a buzz, isn't it? You kind of pull like that. You can't pull it out of the ground, and you think, well, nobody's seen that for about 500-600 years. So, and it's not just the coins. You find buttons and things like that, and brooches, and you can look up the history and find out about it. And that's part of it. Finding out about it after you found it.
I can memorise every hammer coin I've got. I know what they are. I can see them now, and I can see. I've never written down where I found them, but I know exactly where I found them. And my memory's terrible normally. So yeah.
It's quite useful meditation because you're not really thinking of anything, so it's quite nice to just clear your mind and stroll around, a bit of fresh air. Try not to look an idiot. And also then you get to see a lot more variety of finds. You can only find so much on your own. And I think in a lot of cases it's only that I just like to see it, what's come up and what's been around.
Roll on summer pretty much. It's a bit of I'm a shorts and t-shirts detecting man. These lot are hardcore. They'll go in rain, snow, ice.